recording this so that I can share it through YouTube with people who are here and those who aren't able to attend. But turn the phone off, huh? Wait about another minute, and then we can get started. The Q&A feature should be enabled, so if you guys have questions anytime throughout the webinar, feel free to type in a question, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation too. There are two different courses, Alicia, and we'll cover that. I think it's $269 and $299, and there is a discount code that will be presented during the presentation as well. We'll cover all that stuff, the length and what we'll cover in the class, how we guarantee the program, all those things. All right, so some others will probably join us. We had a bunch more signed up, but let's get started. Oops. All right, get my presentation going. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Chuck Zucco. I've been running this company, started this in 1999. And of course, now we're all fancy doing webinars and all those kinds of things now after the post-COVID days. Brand new world, that's for sure. So, as I said, we've been doing MTEL preparation since 1999, 25 years in business. You know, small local business, public school educators, myself and the people that work with me. We've worked with many public school districts, Boston, Lawrence, colleges. We've worked with Endicott recently, Bay Path recently. We do work with lots of different charter schools, have a couple different charter schools now. Over the years, we've had, I don't know, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 students altogether. Always have guaranteed people's success. And what that takes the form as here is that people can repeat the classes without cost. So no matter where you're coming from, you can take your time, study with us, and, you know, pass your MTELs and become an educator. Our curriculum is really designed with everyone in mind. As I said, we're all special educators. And so people with any kind of background, you know, if you're on an IP, have any kind of disability, ADHD, SLD, if you're not a native English speaker, if you haven't been in school for a long time, so you're changing careers, our programs work for all of those folks. We are different than other programs that I've seen out there, and you know, from what my students have described over the years. Again, our curriculum is developed by special educators. We do actual instruction and teaching. So we're not just kind of telling you what's on the exam. We are sharing what to expect, of course, but we're trying to teach you the content and make sure that's accessible to everyone. So we encourage questions. Classes are structured so that people have time to ask questions and time is taken to consider questions carefully. We really try to cover all the skills you need as far as content for the exam, you know, basic to the advanced skills that you need in math and science or English history on this test, to the test taking skills. multiple choice test taking skills. We really build in a system with which to think about multiple choice test taking. Some of you have been in my classes before, I can see here. So you kind of know how we interweave strategies and content throughout the program. And in this particular program, we spend a whole session on test taking skills and really teach people how to think about these tests in different ways. We keep our classes small. We have a community of learners and educators that we've really started since COVID on Facebook, and we have about 450 educators in there now. You can use this forum to contact me and other instructors directly. People ask questions about anything in education, and if I don't know, or Carol or Bill, one of those 400 plus people will know the answer to your question and be able to kind of lead you down the right path. So people form study groups together, through the group. It's been a really nice way to kind of build a community that I'm proud of it, from what we built over the last few years. Things that we do and offer, we have live Zoom classes that most of you probably hear about, the general curriculum classes we offer. We have some self-paced video programs. We tutor for programs we have classes for in some other MTELs and other teacher tests exams as well. And we also have consultation for the MTEL Flex available. There are details on all these things on our website that was posted on the first page of this, and we'll see that website again. Zoom classes, again, these are unconditionally guaranteed. We have educator certification prep, reading and writing. Since the MTEL has alternative tests now, the CASA and the MOGIA, the WESB, for example, we have added those to our stable of classes. We're kind of joining those tests together because they're very similar skill-wise. Of course, we have the present ones we're looking at: general curriculum, math and science, the ELA and history. We have the early childhood MTEL and foundations of reading. That's really offered through our partner, Carol Milano, through her website. She's not teaching Zoom classes yet. I believe she'll be starting up this spring, but we have a video program of hers, if you have issues with the foundations, that you can access from our website. And the video programs we do have communication literacy, reading and writing. The foundations, we have a couple MTEL literacy alternatives, and VCLA, we're going to be adding to these. Within the next several months, I'll be adding video programs for these classes, the early childhood. They're pretty new, so I want to make sure that I teach the program a few times and get as much information as possible before I kind of finalize it and put it in a video program. Tutoring is available, as I said, for any of the subjects above and a few others. And I've helped people over the years with different things, test taking skills in general, or how to structure their open responses. Even if you don't know the content of the test very well, we can always, help people get what they need and pass tests. So I think this test is still new enough where I want to highlight how the old test was compared to the new exam. Most of you maybe took the old one and not the new one. So I want to kind of walk through and highlight the differences and then explain what we do to prepare you. The old test, the 03, was broken up into two parts: multi-subject, which was English, history, and science. 55 multiple choice, 1 open response, 9 to 10% breakdown in the scoring. And then the math was a separate exam, 45 multiple choice, 90%, 1 open response, 10%. 4 hours, 240 was the scale score you need to pass. This test is, different. These tests, I should say. They break it down to the 178 and the 278. The 178 is the kind of the ELA, history, social science. I just say, English and history for kind of shorthand. They're longer collectively, all right, and individually. Now there are 60 multiple choice questions per exam, one open response. All right, so we went from 100 total to 120 total questions. But the score breakdown is essentially the same, 90% multiple choice, 10% open response, one open response for each. Well, I can get into that over here as far as the number of questions each. The new exam, there is about twice as much history as English, all right? And the open response question is very different than it had been, all right? The biggest difference in this exam is probably the open response question. And the nature of the questions themselves for the multiple choice, some are similar. Content is relatively similar, but the questions are more application-based than memorization-based. All right, and we'll get into some examples of how that is. On the 278, it's a relatively even amount of math and science. They say there's a little more math than science on the test. So we're going to get a handful more math, probably, right? That can vary. One open response question. The open response question is very different. The math multiple choice is very, very similar to what it was before. All right. And reports are some identical questions from what was on the test previously. So most of our old material is still applicable. And, I've been prepping people for that test a year before they even gave the test out. So that test started in 2009 to 03. In 2008, I started developing a program and preparing people for that new test. And so all that material I've been collecting for the last, 14, 15 years, still applies to this exam. So we're in good place for that. Science and technology, again, very similar. There's some differences. The structure of the questions, probably more different than the content. Open response is very different on the math and science as well. So specifically the open response questions, on the new test, we see here, you have to compare two historical passages. All right, so there's ELA because it's kind of reading comprehension and analysis of what's going on. And there's a history component to it as well. All right, so I know on the example they give, they talk about the Magna Carta, for example, and they have the original, the primary document of the Magna Carta, and then a more modern from the 1930s or 40s or something, analysis of the Magna Carta. And so you have to kind of talk about the main idea, point of view, and really use information from the passages to back up why you think the main idea is what it is and why the main points are, point of view is of each. The math science is an integrated math science question. It's not just math or just science like on the old exam. Now it's a math science concept, and we'll see how they map this out in a minute. We have an example of that. I think this is going to be very challenging for people, both of these, if you have issues with, really understanding old writing, something that's not very modern, something you don't really, not easy to understand at first reading. If you get anxious reading an old stuff or have test taking anxiety, I think it's going to make the passages themselves less accessible and more difficult. If you have difficulty with math and or science, or math and science, understanding the scenario and tying together the science concepts with the math and vice versa could be also challenging. So I think the open responses generally are more challenging than the old ones, because the old ones you can kind of study and memorize what to do. So we spend a good amount of time in the new program talking about strategies to do better and make this as accessible as we possibly can. So here are kind of comparisons between the old and new multiple choice questions. And this is just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, how the structure of the questions has changed. In the old days, they might have asked something like, which sentence has a error in subject verb agreement, some straightforward grammar. The new test, they give you a structured conversation between students, right? So you read what this kid said, what that kid said, how the teacher set this conversation up. Why? What's the purpose of it? So it's more about, do you know how to teach certain concepts more than do you just understand certain concepts? All right. So I think that part should be easier content-wise, because people are good teachers and know what they're talking about. But sometimes the questions are so language dense and lengthy that, again, because of anxiety or any kind of language or reading issues, the questions may be less accessible for some people. And instead of saying what literary device is being used in a certain poem, they may be asking you to identify the point of view in a passage or identify the tone of a passage. These are new concepts for the MTEL, kind of similar to some of the things you might see on the communication literacy reading subtest. Like you could get some point of view questions on that test itself, but the concept of tone, I shouldn't say it's new, because on previous versions of this exam, before it became the 03, back when it was, it's an elementary test, they got into questions like this or concepts like this. So in history, social studies, back before the test changed, before this August 20th or whenever it was, there were questions about really straightforward history, right? English settlers in Massachusetts, although there is some content on that came up on the new early childhood test. They just released a practice test, and there's a lot of overlap between the early childhood test and the general curriculum traditionally. But straightforward American history is mostly American history. And now they're looking at things that, again, more concepts behind issues in history, or how to teach, or why are we teaching certain things in history. So what was influenced, what events influenced women getting the right to vote? Not when did they get the right to vote, but what historically was going on, why did they earn the right to vote? Looking at two passages about a famous author or historical figure, interpreting, comparing, so higher level reading comparison, higher level analysis than we had to before, where again, it was just more rote memory. And again, using details of a conversation to answering following questions. Why would this be set up? What's the result? What's the teacher's goal with structuring a question or a conversation in a certain way? A lot of kind of a social emotional stuff is being kind of thrown into the history social studies questions as well. Math questions, very similar structure and content to the old test. All right, like I had said. Overall, there seems to be less geometry and probability, and you have some math, science, practical problems combined, like something like this here, where they're looking at two air ducts, and it's looking at surface area. All right, so it's kind of a, practical problem that's mostly different than what we had seen in the past, where they just said, hey, here's a math problem. But again, still very similar, still a lot of the old questions showing up, some exactly like they were before from what has been reported. Science, technology, similar content, similar questions, but there are some more practical questions. And just like in the history of English, some more student-centered practical questions. Like here's a question, a more science technology. Students testing a type of shoe, and they're giving a survey. What engineering design is represented in the scenario. All right, so it's not straightforward memorization stuff, but taking a situation, looking at a practical example of something and applying the science or technology engineering solution to that problem. So the open response, again, the old question was either a history or a science question. If you could memorize information, you were pretty much all set. The new test, very different. Again, you're looking at two passages. One is a primary passage from what we've seen so far. All right, so Magna Carta, or something written in the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries by a famous author, historical figure. And then a modern description or a commentary on that primary source. And you have to really look at an analysis. You have to think about what's the main idea of each, maybe a little, how are they similar, how are they different? What's the second author kind of saying about the content of the first author? So this is harder if you have difficulty with this high level analysis, or if reading comprehension is a weakness, or if you're not a native English speaker, it would be more difficult too, because those primary passages are kind of technical reading. It's not going to be as straightforward as even a reading passage on the communication literacy test would be. So, the first example here is looking at the new test. As we've mentioned, they give two passages, one from the Magna Carta itself, one written about the Magna Carta, and you have to determine and compare the main ideas, analyze and compare the purpose and point of view, and then importantly, integrate info and cite evidence. So they want you to say, the main idea is this based on this, or as evidenced in line 6, here's the author's purpose, here's the point of view. You must tie in and integrate evidence into your answer. All right, that's going to be a big part of your score. And the old test, again, it was more memorization. You could, study this stuff and just kind of give information. It wasn't as much analysis and synthesizing ideas as it is now. Again, the math, the old test gave you student work, and they asked you to analyze the student work, find his errors, explain why he was making these errors, etc. The new test, they give you a scenario to analyze and integrate math and science concepts. So again, similar to the English and history, it's more difficult if this higher level analysis, anxiety, if that kind of thing is a weakness, this is going to be more difficult than the previous exam. The old test, right? This is from one of their practice tests. They ask for the fraction of the semicircle of the entire figure. They give the kids work, and you had to provide a alternative solution, find the kids' errors, etc. Right? That's the old test. We don't have to waste a lot of time on it. You're probably familiar with it if you've been struggling with this test for a while. And the new test, it's scenario-based. All right, so students measuring the lengths of shadows at different times of the day. Students observe the shadow is longer in the morning and afternoon, shortest around noontime. They give you measurements. The teacher is this tall, shadow is this long, etc. Here is another graphic they would give you here, right? With the shadow, with the teacher at different times, length, all this stuff. And they want you to use proportion reasoning to find the height of the tree and describe how you found your answers. All right, so show those steps. And then that's the math part. And the science part is explaining why the length and direction of the shadow changes. So you got to talk about, the orbit of the sun and all that stuff that factors in, the earth is spinning and sunrise, sunset, east, west, right? It's kind of a lot that goes into that. So most of us have a general sense of how that works. But again, putting it together under pressure, can be difficult. And this one is, I think, much easier than the first one that has been given on the real exam from what was reported, which was about density or something like that. So our programs are as follows. I just got to move this around here. Hold on a second. Sorry. So the old programs were 4 sessions for multi-subject, 6 for the math. You see the prices down there. And of course, all my materials are guaranteed. All right, that will never change as long as it's my company. The new programs, very similar time frame. I tried to do 5 sessions for the math science. That didn't work, so we'll go in the 6. All right. The ELA history, 4 sessions was fine, 4 2-hour sessions. We record the sessions, so you have access to the recording, so you can review. If you'd like, you can listen to me as many times as you want. Lucky you. I think I'm kind of funny, so you'll see in class I'm much more lively and have a lot of jokes. We got a Facebook group, so you can interact with us. I'm available between classes for questions. Formal tutoring is available if you need it. The first class, again, we look at test-taking skills. All right, we spend a couple hours really reviewing and building a test-taking system with you that's logic-based, that's going to maximize your score. All right, tell you how to answer questions that you don't know the answer to, all based on logic. All right, so we spend a good amount of time on that in the first class for both. And then we're going to spend a week on English, a week on history, and then the last class will be on the open response, where we have to integrate everything and look at those passages and strategies of how to really understand those passages best and how to write the passages. And we'll do some practice, right, with all the available information we have. They'll most likely release a practice test within a few months, probably mid-spring. There'll be a practice test that we're going to glean some more information from as well. The math science, again, I thought 5 sessions was too, not enough time for people. So I did an extra session, kind of a drop-in ask math questions session for the last one. So we're going to kind of make that a formal part of the program. We will do the test taking skills because for the science, same kind of multiple choice strategies as it is for the English and history. And then we're going to go through 3 sessions of math. We'll cover a lot of the same concepts we covered on the old program. And I'm not sure exactly how it'll break out. Every group's a little bit different, and I've only been through it once. So we might do another just come and ask questions, right? Based on the practice tests, right? It's based on really good MTEL material, or we may do some more formal training depending on how we do in class and where we are after the first couple math sessions. And then we'll work on science in the 5th class. That takes a couple of hours to look at all the science concepts and make sure we understand the things that come up on the test. And then the last class, again, we use to cover the open response. So these are different programs. The math, I think, meets on Tuesdays. English and history meets on Wednesday evenings. And you see the prices there. You will get a discount code that's going to come up relatively soon that you get a 20% discount if you register anytime tonight through the weekend. All right, take about 50 or 60 bucks off the price of this if you use that code. Here are the dates. All right, so there are 3 programs scheduled for the rest of the academic year. We're starting in January, another class in March, and then a class in May. When I get closer to the summer and know more of what my plans are and how the demand is for the classes, we often add at least 1 program for over the summer. Sometimes that goes really well, and sometimes people are away and there's not much demand. So we'll see how that goes as time goes on, but we'll have 3 classes. If you sign up for any of these over the next few days, you can use that discount code. It's not just for the January program. So registration, the website again, joineti.com. And you just got to find the general curriculum, click on that, and it'll take you to either one of these programs here. There's the discount GC20, and you get a discount on the Zoom classes. My contact information is right here. So, call me, text me, message me. If you end up joining a class, you can join the Facebook group and, see all my vacation pictures and, reach out on Facebook as well. So that's all the content I have for you right now. So I will stop talking and let you guys ask any questions that you have. So just jump right in. Just use the Q&A. Jump right in there if you have any questions. No questions, anybody? Okay. Hi, Adam. Your ELR application for the license is in idle status. Huh. Adam, I'm not sure. I think we'd have to talk about that. So give me a call. All right. You got my number. Give me a call and we can walk through that. I'm not exactly sure. It could be a number of things, I think. My wife is saying that she might have an idea why, but all right. So Gina, if you pass the old test, you need to take the new one. Did you pass the Gina, did you pass the multi-subject? Because you have to pass one test that covers history, English, science, and math. So if you pass the math and only the math, you still have to pass something that has the science. So you will have to take the new test if that's the case, if you only pass the math subtest and not the multi-subject. There's a blog I wrote on this that's on that website as well that you can read about. What if I passed one half? Do I need to take the other? Some people say, oh, just take the elementary math. No, that's much more difficult than this general curriculum math test. You could also take a different science test, but I don't recommend that either. This science test is easier than any of the other middle school or high school science tests. And Adam, I don't know. I need to know why it's idle. I'm not sure. Do we need both courses for the moderate disability? Well, you don't need the courses for that, but you need both of these exams. You need both exams, Jennifer, in order to pass the moderate disabilities, right? Both parts of the general curriculum you have to pass for the moderate disability or elementary license. All right, so Gina, you have to take both tests because you didn't pass the multi-subject, unfortunately. So you have to take the English history and you have to take the math science because you need all of those subjects they want you to pass. That's how they've set it up. Other questions? Any other questions, guys? All right. Looks like all your questions are answered. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. You got my email address, you got my phone number. Again, you can reach me on Facebook or through the website. Hope to see you all in class. And I guess that's it. Thank you all very much. Good night, everybody.